Hi, Spire friends. It's Ben here. I'm with Melissa Attebury. She's coming to us from the East Coast. We're so grateful to have her. Melissa has been singing with us now for several years, and we'd love to get to know her a little bit better and just kind of see what makes her tick as a musician. So, welcome, Melissa. Glad you're here today.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Great. So tell us a little bit about um, where you grew up and kind of how you got your start into music.
I'm actually a native of Kansas. I was born in Newton, Kansas, and grew up in Derby, so right outside of Wichita. So I spent all of my formative years there, and I actually went to WSU. So for a certain period of my life, I had always spent more time in Kansas than I had in New York. Now the scales are starting to tip.
Yeah.
um, so I actually started as a pianist, and I did that when I was started when I was about 3 years old. My mother was a pianist, and my family is very involved in the Methodist Church. So I had a lot of choral singing growing up. I also played the violin, and it wasn't really until high school when I decided to pursue voice kind of as my main instrument and started intense lessons and doing some more solo repertoire. So I came to music very early and was really born into it.
Very cool. That's yeah. Melissa and I think our Spire audience will like to know this. Is that my wife's brother and Melissa went to high school together. So kind of a fun little twist there that cool Kansas connection. They make lots of great people in Kansas. So tell us a little bit about so who were some of your biggest musical influences, both as you were growing up and as you became a professional?
So I would say, as I was growing up, my grandmother was kind of my musical idol. She had this coloratura voice and she could do anything with it. She sang all the solos in church. And it was always amazing what she could do. Um, so I feel like I really developed a love of singing from her and wanting to strive to be able to sing like she did, because it was different than how everyone else
Hmm.
sounded in the choir. She had this magnificent solo voice. Um, and when I got to university, at WSU, I had two different teachers that really were a big influence on me. Dr. Dorothy Crum and
Oh, yeah.
then Dr. George Gibson. I was able to study with both of them, and they both certainly, influenced me and helped build my technique. And particularly, Dr. Gibson instilled a love of opera for
Hmm.
me that I hadn't had growing up, since I really grew up with mostly church music.
Yeah.
And then I would say another influence, and this is pretty obvious being from Kansas and also WSU, but Joyce DiDonato
Hmm.
has just done marvelous things and really put Kansas City and Kansas WSU really on the map. I remember hearing her as a freshman at
Wow.
WSU. She came to give a recital, and she was in the very, kind of beginning stages of her career. But I was just entranced, and I was like, I want to do what she does. How does she do that? Can I sing that kind of repertoire? Um, and I've followed her career, throughout the years, and you know, just very inspiring.
Yeah, she really is. One time I was at a donor event and got to meet her for a quick second. And so I will always cherish that memory. She's a kind, dear soul that has done so much for our field, and really an arts advocate. So I think that's been something that's so important. So tell us a little bit. So you mentioned studying an opera at WSU, and then is that correct that you moved after WSU to the East Coast for graduate school?
I did. That's correct. I went to the University of Maryland, and they have an opera studio program, and so I went there, and that was a 3-year graduate program. And I had a wonderful time there. That was a big change for me, coming from a very small town in Kansas, moving to, a pretty urban area like Washington, D.C. Um, After I finished that, I did a couple of different young artist programs. One of them was in Alaska. I got to spend
Oh,
9 months in Alaska, which was really amazing. What a great experience. Most people wouldn't
yeah.
choose to do that for a year of their life, but I was lucky to have that opportunity. Um, and after that, I moved to New York. And the timing of my move is interesting. I moved right before 9/11 happened in 2001.
Ah, wow,
Yes.
wow.
And it was one of those situations. I remember talking with my mom on the phone and her saying, "Are you sure you don't want to just come back to Kansas,
Yeah,
Melissa?
yeah,
Are you sure you're going to stay in that big city?" Um, and I had already landed a really nice church job. I had a good part-time gig. And I said, "No, Mom, I came here to sing opera. I'm staying here. This is what so I stayed."
yeah. That's exciting. So what, as your career developed in New York and everything, what do you consider to be teaching some of our audience will know this term, but Fach or German, literally meaning compartment. What the type of music you sing? What do you think that are some of the things that really just you love singing and that fits your voice and that you could do until you're 90? What are some of those things that you really feel like that this is my best work when you're doing your solo singing and that just really feels natural to you.
So I would say it's interesting because it's changed a little bit over the years.
Hmm.
When I was a little younger, just starting out, I was really focused on Mozart and Rossini and
Mm-hmm.
those comedic roles.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is particularly when I was focused just on mostly opera and not choral or oratorio work.
yeah,
And I loved that. I loved anything that was high and fast,
yeah,
anything high mezzo, you got
yeah,
it. That's what I wanted to do. And it's interesting. After I turned 30, I could really feel more of a kind of a depth and
hmm.
more warmth and breath to my voice that started to come into play. And what I discovered is that Bach and Handel were really good fits for my
Yeah,
voice,
yeah,
particularly the mezzo roles in Handel's operas. Um, because they still have plenty of the
yeah, yeah,
fioritura
yeah,
and but there's a different sense of drama
yeah.
with those that isn't so much in the Mozart and Rossini. There's a
Mm-hmm.
little more seriousness,
Mm-hmm.
which was good for me. It went along with also being a more mature singer.
Yeah,
Um, and of course, Bach is one of my favorites. I love singing Bach. But I will say, I like singing Bach more as a choral singer, I think, than a solo
ah,
singer.
ah,
And mostly because, it was written for a countertenor and it's so
yeah,
low in the female voice.
yeah,
So particularly when we do it at uh, performance pitch down at 415, it's a challenge.
yeah,
I almost would just prefer to sing soprano in that
yeah.
case, which then brings me to I'm going to keep talking.
No,
Sorry
that's
about
great. That's great.
I so in terms of my Fach, from the moment I started at WSU, they kept calling me a Zwischenfach. That's what I was labeled as always. Really never you're a spinto soprano.
Yeah,
No, you're a contralto. I was always in between because I could kind of go back and
yeah,
forth.
yeah.
And what's interesting is I've still been able to do that all these years. And I
Uh-huh.
think that part of that reason that I have that easy facility is because of the choral singing and sometimes needing to switch up to soprano, sometimes needing to go down and perhaps sing with the tenors,
Yeah.
but having an easy facility of doing all of it, I get to exercise my entire range all the time.
Yeah, and that was going to lead into my next question. I know for me, many times I've had you switch up, and there's a famous example of when we did. Most of our audience members have our Frank Martin Mass CD, and there's a famous moment where I had some of the mezzos jump up, and you did one of the little duet parts on second soprano. Yeah, it's fairly high, and so I always knew that Melissa could do, just
Oh, I
she's
love
the
it.
chameleon. She can jump up there and do those things, and that's really great. So let's transition to that and tell us a little bit about your choral singing lately, and what do you love about it? I know you do a lot of it with various groups, and then perhaps what are some of the challenges of professional choral singing these days?
Well, like I said before, I kind of came to the choral singing game a little bit later
Hmm.
because when I was in college and getting my master's degree, I was really just mainly focused on opera and solo singing. I always sang in a choir, but I was more headed on an opera career track. back. And it wasn't until I moved into New York City and started singing with some fantastic ensembles. And um, I didn't have any trouble with the auditions in terms of sight reading and the blending. And I will say that it's because of my background as a pianist, because I
Great.
started with piano and I did violin. I've always had those chops. And being able to sight read,
Mhm.
whatever they hand in front of you, that's what you needed to be, to get in some of these very high level groups, particularly in New York City. So I didn't realize that I could probably piece together a career pretty well singing in choral groups. That wasn't something and that presented itself to me, or that I realized was even possible when I was in Kansas.
Mm.
But once I got to New York, I was like, oh, I could actually do this. And um, I love singing in a choir. I love singing solo too,
Mhm.
but singing in a choir, it's the old saying, the whole is greater than the sum
Mhm.
of its parts. It's a team exercise,
Yeah.
um, and everyone shares the burden together. When you're a soloist, it's all on you.
It's all on
It's
you.
it's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
When you're in a choir, it's so nice to make music with all your people around you, and it helps when you're friends as well, and you're really connected. Everyone's
Mhm.
kind of working right along the same wavelength, and it's such a rewarding experience. When you're a soloist, you're getting it, but it's all by yourself,
Mhm.
and the applause is nice, but you're not getting to share it, collaboratively with anybody necessarily, not in the same way that you would in a
Mhm.
choir.
Mm.
So I really enjoy the choral work, and I really enjoy teaching choruses as well, which
Yeah.
that's kind of the other thing I do besides performing is I conduct a lot, and that's it's a joy to be able to pass that gift on to younger people.
Yeah, that's so needed in our world today is to help that next generation. So you mentioned kind of the high level New York, and I think so. One thing that kind of performance scene, I think that one thing that Spire has done over the last 10 years is perhaps create a little bit of that. In the heartland, in Kansas City. And I know that our patrons and our audience have grown to love these musicians now that have been hanging out with us for 10 years and building this community of people. So tell us a little bit about what you love about Kansas City, and then do you have a favorite Spire memory of the last several years, or something that would be fun to share with our audience?
Sure. Um, so I will say that I was so delighted when back in 2011 or 12, whenever
Mhm.
I heard about you and what you were doing, and I thought, oh my gosh, someone's doing early music and small chamber ensemble works in Kansas City. That's where I'd love to be doing that
Mhm.
kind of work. I'd love to be able to do it back in my home state.
Mhm.
And I was so excited to meet you and to be able to come out and do my first Messiah with Spire. Um, I love every time I land at MCI, I just feel like I'm back home.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, I have not lived in Kansas since 1997, but it doesn't take, that doesn't disappear. I still feel like I'm back home. This weight disappears.
Yeah.
That that weight of the shoulders that's comes with maybe living in a large city like New York.
Yeah.
And so I just breathe this sigh of relief every time I land there, and I love being there and getting to hold on just a second.
No, that's
I'm
okay.
still working. Thank you. I also have two children I'm schooling during this
I
time.
understand. Yes, that's the beauty of all of this.
Yes, we're exactly. Um, so it's just a great joy to me to feel so relaxed
Mm.
when I come to Kansas City because it is familiar to me. It's
Yeah.
it's home. I love the people. Everyone's warm and friendly. From the Uber drivers to the woman at a CVS, and then of course all your wonderful audience members and patrons,
Mhm.
and it's just so welcoming, and I really appreciate that. Um, I love the barbecue. I
Mm.
love Graham and Don restaurant.
Ah, yes.
I go there every time I'm there. And I love because I have a lot of friends and family that live up in the area, and so I'm always able to see them or perhaps stay with them when I'm in Kansas City. But it really means a lot to me to be doing the work that I've trained for so many years,
Mm.
and that I love so much, that I'm able to do it back in my home state. It feels like, coming full circle. That's how I would describe it. Um, then in terms of experiences, so I have kind of two fun stories. Well, the
That's
first
great.
one, I don't know how fun it is, but it was the very first Spire I did. That was at Messiah in
Yeah.
2012.
Yeah.
And that was the year of the snowstorm when everyone was, d- coming from, I think there were a lot of people coming from the Coast, but people got stuck all over the
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
I remember everyone running into the church mid rehearsal still with, suitcases.
Yeah.
I got stuck in St. Louis with a couple of other artists, and I remember you and Margot
Yeah.
were able to help get us a rental car, and we all got thrown together. And I didn't know all of them, but by the end of the drive, I did. And we
Yeah.
drove straight to the church, jumped into rehearsal, and I'd never met you face to face
Yeah.
yet, and so it was a fun, here you go, you're landing in, jump in, start singing. Then, same gig, I think at least one person got sick,
Yes. Yes.
soloist. And so I had to fill in. You said, hey, Melissa, can you just sing this aria too? Just
Yeah.
jumped up and sang it. um, which is fun. That's what, I love doing that. And when it's, you don't even have time to get nervous, you just jump in and perform. Um, so yeah, it was that was a fun start to our work together.
Yeah.
Kind of just really being thrown into it. Despite the snowstorms all around us, we still made a beautiful concert happen. Um, and then I would say my other favorite memory is actually one of the last concerts I was able to sing with Spire, which was Messiah of 2019. No,
Hmm.
2018. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's 2020 now, isn't it? It was
It flies by. Yeah.
yeah. When you did the Messiah
Mhm.
and did some gender switching of the solo assignments,
Yeah.
and I got
Yeah.
to sing "Trumpet Shall Sound" in Hillsburg Hall, and that is one of my top 10 favorite performance moments, hands down.
So good.
I loved that so much. We were so connected, and we were
Mhm.
connected with our trumpet player and the audience. I just, you could feel them, that they were filled with joy. And it's right towards the end of the oratorio. It's
Yeah.
such a pivotal moment, and what a great joy to be able to sing that with you and my colleagues there in that beautiful hall in my home state. And something I might not get to do again because it's not traditional
Yeah.
for a mezzo to sing that. But man, thank you for that. That was a
Well,
top
I'm
point.
glad you mentioned that because I wanted to mention because I know that lots of our audience members and patrons will remember that because there was just you could hear an audible gasp in the audience when so we're so ingrained to hearing that baritone voice, but it gave a color of a different kind of triumph and particularly from a woman singing that this beautiful and profound story, and you just did it with such conviction and just kind of raw passion, and the energy in the room was just palpable. So that was, I know we received lots of notes and lots of encouragement from experimenting with that, and that was a really powerful moment for us as well.
Thank you.
Well, Melissa, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to share a little bit about your story and where you come from. I think it's so fascinating that we have this Kansas connection, and we will look forward to that next time that we get to be together.
I do too. Thank you
Great.
so much, Ben, for having me today.
Thank you.